Well, the government has imposed stringent guidelines for the setting up of mobile phone towers in the country. This comes after intense pressure from groups who've pointed out the hazards of electromagnetic radiation, both from mobile phones and cell towers.
In a country where there are over 270 million mobile phone users and 3 lakh towers, the guidelines have been welcomed, at least by some.
After accepting the need of stringent anti-radiation international standards last month, the government has gone a step ahead and banned setting up of mobile phone towers in schools and hospitals. It has also made mandatory for the cellular firms to take permission from local resident welfare associations before setting up mobile base stations in residential areas. All these are done as part of the efforts to limit the harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation exposure.
If you have high level of radiation, and the question always arises, what is high? High level of radiation can cause damage. The damage will be obviously because of the fact that this is energy which is impinging on human tissue, and it creates certain reactions perhaps, and chemical reactions or whatever.
The radiation problem could be too big to be ignored. The 3 lakh odd towers across the country are exposing people to radiation much above the accepted limits of 450 microwatt per square centimeter, set by the International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. The guidelines now say base station antennas should be at least 3 meters away from any building. It also should not directly face any building. The order also asks telecom firms to share resources in place of the general practice of setting up multiple base stations in one locality. Associations demanding safeguards have asked people living 400 to 500 meters near mobile towers to get their houses tested for radiation. The government guidelines come on the heels of a proposal to make it compulsory for mobile phone manufacturers to specify the radiation levels emitted by mobile phone handsets. The telecom lobbying firm of the cell phone companies, COAI, has already lodged its protest against the order with the telecom secretary in a letter dated 3rd of June. Puneet Chandra, NewsX.
So what are the risks of living and working near mobile towers, near base station antennas, indeed of using mobile phones themselves? Let's ask Zafar Haq. He's the CEO of Cogent EMR Solutions Limited, which is a technology company that manufactures radiation shielding equipment. Welcome, Mr. Haq. Let me first ask you, how dangerous are mobile phones to use? Also, how dangerous is it to live and work near mobile towers and base station antenna?
See, this is a misconception which is going on. Mobile phones are not dangerous at all. Mobile phones, some mobile phones are unsafe. Let's put in right perspective. If we have enough precautions, that's what the WHO says, that's what various countries had adopted. Take precautionary approach, do enough safety to your mobile phones, protect yourself from electromagnetic radiations, and use mobile phones to your convenience.
Mr. Haq, how do you define unsafe?
You see, there's an energy which brings the signals to us. We speak, and where does that energy goes? It penetrates into our head. Mobile phone is close to our heart when we are not using it, our brain when we are using it, or our groin and other sensitive parts when we are not using it. And these are the parts which are very sensitive to heat and subthermal energies and subthermal radiations. These organs have to be protected from these radiations.
Yeah, but on the one hand you're saying, on the other hand you're saying that mobile phones are safe to use. I mean, how do you sort of reconcile this sort of contradiction?
You see, what
it's a level of safety, yes, I suppose you're talking about.
Right. What happens in various countries where mobile telephony is matured, that there are guidelines, there are safety norms, and manufacturers and service providers follow those safety norms, and those mobile phones are safe.
But when you say, are you then saying that the onus, even in our country, which of course is not a developed market but has 270 million users, it is developing, yes. You feel the onus is on the manufacturers, or is it a little bit on the consumer as well? In the sense, are there some precautions that the consumer can take?
You see, it starts, number one, it comes, is the consumer literate enough about this new technology? That is where the role of the government comes. Somebody has to tell us. If we go and buy a CDMA phone or a GSM phone, frankly, 80% of the users do not know what is the difference between a CDMA and GSM phone, except this package is cheaper, I buy this, and next month this package is cheaper, I discard my previous phone and buy a new phone. They should know what are the technologies, what are the safety limits, which is a better thing. Now you buy a higher end phone or you buy a...
So you're feeling the government can create this kind of awareness in the consumer?
Yes, first the government has to set some norms, government has to create the awareness, education has to come about this technology and these technologies which are used for mobile telephony, and then the manufacturers and service providers have to follow those, and consumers also
Okay,
have
we're
to
talking
follow
about
those.
mobile phones. Let's also talk about mobile towers and base station antennas, because we know the government is now banning them from being placed in schools and hospitals. Could you just tell us briefly that in general, what are the kind of places that they're currently planted in, and in contrast, what are the ideal locations for these mobile towers and antennas?
You see, mobile towers and the mobile antennas, the critical difference is that how distant it is from a living person. Like if it is on top of my house, it has to be 3 meters above the roof.
Right.
If it is just next to my window put on someone else's roof, I am exposed to that radiation and the emission of that radiation for at least 10 hours when I am sleeping in my bedroom, and those are the situations which are dangerous. You can put up a mobile phone on top of a school, provided you have got a 50-meter antenna, 50-meter tower, and the antenna goes on top of that. So it creates that distance, and that distance, with that distance, the radiation levels and its effect comes down drastically.
Mr. Haq, we'll continue this discussion, but let's get our viewers a little bit more about one of the studies that has been done. Now, according to that, radio frequency emissions by mobile phones can lead to infertility, and this is not the only study which is pointing at the risks.
In fact, the Union Health Ministry has now set up a study cell to find out the damaging influence of radio frequency radiation.
A study says radiation from mobile phones are found to have damaged DNA and low sperm count, leading to infertility and reduction in testis size. This is the most recent but not the only study which points to the risks involved with the mobile radio frequency radiation, or RFR. As far back as 1997, the Department of Public Health and Policy in the London School of Hygiene revealed a significant increase in adult leukemias in residences near the Sutton coalfield television and frequency modulation radio transmitter. Another study done by 2 professors of Denmark the same year reported low sperm count in the Danish military personnel who operated mobile missiles and worked with several RFR emitting radar systems. Various other studies also point out to disabilities caused by RFR emissions. These include instances of DNA single-strand breaks, leukemia cells exposure, brain tumor, and effects on the immune system. Although mobile companies say there are only slight heating effects, research shows that the rate at which the body absorbs these radiation emissions are much above the prescribed norms, which means radiation effects can influence the brain and other tissues, including the DNA of mobile users and those who live near mobile towers. With Puneet Chandra in New Delhi, Pankaj Mishra, NewsX.
All right, and now we've got another guest with us. This is Dr. Sushma Sinha, who's a senior consultant with Apollo Hospital, and she is, of course, an expert on infertility. Dr. Sinha, we've been talking to Mr. Haq, and he was raising the point about the fact that if there are certain precautions that manufacturers take, and if there's certain awareness that the consumer has, things would look up, and that there should be some kind of precautions. Now, let's talk particularly about infertility, because there's a study that has been done apparently on rats, which has proved that there is some kind of a connection. Yeah. Has the study proved to an extent that there is some impact on human beings as well?
Yeah, of course, because most of the studies are done either on the rats or the guinea pigs. And because you don't do studies on human beings, very few studies are done in human beings, especially in terms of the drugs and all. You don't do studies on human beings. First of all, you...
but has any connection been made between infertility and mobile phones?
See, there has been so many studies about the laptop. As far as mobiles are concerned, I am not aware, but this is a new thing which has come up, and I would say that mobile is in a very nascent phase. But if it is affecting the brain, definitely it's going to affect the part of the brain which is responsible for fertility.
When people come to you for advice, what do you tell them? Is there a sort of safer way of using mobile phones, maybe limiting the number of minutes you use it every day, maybe using the hands-free set, maybe keeping it a certain distance away? I mean, what would you recommend to all those viewers who use mobile phones?
See, my recommendation will be based on the study which proves that the fertility of a male has decreased over the past 50 years, and the sperm count has gone down by 50%.
Dr. Sinha, what about pregnant women? Do you advise them to reduce the mobile usage?
No, we don't. As of now, we don't advise anything about the mobile phones, but we do tell the patients, especially those who have got very poor sperm count, we do tell them that please use less of the laptop, less of the mobiles, and apart from other things like smoking, alcohol and all.
Which are the normal things that you would tell anybody else, right? Which are the normal health hazards?
Of mobiles?
No, I mean smoking or
In
alcohol
general.
is a normal
general,
health
see,
hazards.
The pollution itself is a big hazard.
Right.
Apart from that, smoking, alcohol, tobacco, laptop, mobiles.
All right. In that case, I mean, we are looking at basically really restricting your lifestyle, Mr. Haq and Dr. Sinha. Thank you very much for talking to us today and coming into our studio.
Thank you.
So there you had it, two experts talking about the fact, what is the impact of radiation and mobile phones? Is there a connection between your health and mobile phones? Very little seems to have been done in terms of scientific studies, but of course there is a very clear thing that you should be a little safe and take as many precautions as you can. Time for a break, and after that we're going to meet two stars. We're going to meet Sikandar Kher of Woodstock Villa